everyone. My name is Nadi Thekek. I go by she, her, or they, them pronouns. I am the artistic director of Nava Dance Theater, a Bharatanatyam, an experimental dance company based here in San Francisco, which of course is the unceded territory of the Ohlone people. And I'll let Ankita introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Ankita. I'm working with Nadi as program manager of Nava Dance Theater, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm also a movement artist, and I'm excited to see everyone's work.
Yay! We're just excited about all the folks who have reached out so far about the Unrehearsed Artist Residency Program and the application. And we decided that it would be good to come together and answer some of the questions that some of you folks have had. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about the program. The Unrehearsed Artist Residency Program was first conceived, I think, 5 years ago as a way for us to learn together, to celebrate the strengths of communities and folks who are often not represented in conventionally funded performance and dance spaces, and to fund and support the development of dance makers who are challenging the status quo in different ways. Of course, this has supported folks who are either South Asian artists making dance works or anyone doing a South Asian dance form. The actual program, the nuts and bolts of the program, it is a virtual residency program. And what that means is everyone stays where they are. They don't really travel too much. The cohort members that are chosen are committing to 50 hours of work on their project, whatever that means to them. This usually involves some sort of studio time, and the residency provides funds for you to sort of rent studio space wherever you are. We also meet once a month with the cohort to share work. We also do feedback that's sort of guided by the Liz Lerman critical response process or other processes that the artists are familiar with or want to use. And in many ways, it is a peer support network, but there's also a way for us to bring in mentors to support artists in their journey and whatever their project is. After about 6 or 7 cohort meetings, we do a public work in progress sharing that is on Zoom. And the idea is that you don't need to have a finished product, but you will need to share whatever sort of you've been up to during the residency. People do often share like a complete thought, I guess, of a project, but it's not necessarily the final show or a final version of a project. In fact, many artists continue working on this piece and do premieres later on in the year or the following year if they get other funding or other opportunities. This is very process based, and if you have like an upcoming show or premiere like within the same time frame of this residency, it actually might not be a good fit for you because it's hard not to focus on the product when you're in that space. So it's really meant for artists who are really wanting to try a project out that they wouldn't have a chance to try out in other ways, and finding out what a process looks like. Often artists are emerging or mid-career. They are movement forward, either practice some sort of dance form or dance genre, or maybe they're multidisciplinary artists with movement in their work. So it really, we've had folks from all over that spectrum of movement. So far, so good. Am I hitting all the points?
You hit all the points, yeah.
I think we can go into some of the questions. Yeah. I guess the application is due November 30th. There's a number of different questions, and Ankita will sort of ask questions about the questions. So hopefully that'll help you answer them to the best of your ability.
Yeah, so we've compiled a list of questions just to help everyone out. This has been done with the help of our past cohort and from questions we've gotten along the way as we're making this app, from broad to specific. And if you have any questions after these questions, you can feel free to reach out to us at the email provided. So the first question for you is, what kind of artist is the residency best primed to serve? I think you talked a little bit about them being people who are socially forward and wanting to think about issues within the South Asian arts community. So what does that really mean?
Yeah, so I'm going to start sort of broadly because we want to keep it a bit open-ended because we don't know sort of the breadth of all the different artists and art forms and genres that exist. But definitely what we find the cohort supports are artists who are doing socially engaged work or sort of work that's meant to challenge the status quo in some way. And that ranges from really extremely like political work to things that are maybe quote unquote more traditional and yet challenge the status quo in that particular genre or in that particular community. So we really leave it to the artist to define that. And I think what's been really, I think, common across, again, this really wide spectrum of movement artists is that they are all really engaged with a particular community, and whether that is identity based or genre based, and they're really in networks of mutual support. So really, them creating this work not only like supports their own process and work as an artist, but there's definitely like ways that that work connects to the rest of you know their community in some way. And again, this could range from a Bharatanatyam dancer challenging what Bharatanatyam is to them and how it sits politically. It can be a drag artist making a movement forward theater work. And also it's sort of up to each artist and how their identities might play into that work and their process. But we leave it open-ended for them to talk about.
Something you also mentioned in the intro was that this could be for emerging or mid-career artists.
Yeah.
Can you talk about whether this is open to dancers and makers or both? And can you talk about if people should have been making for a certain number of years, or like what are you really looking for?
Yeah, I think we kind of in the application we talk a little bit about this where we're looking for folks who are not brand new to making work. They maybe have been making work for at least a couple of years, but again, there's been a range of folks who have just been making work for a couple of years or folks who've been making it for 5 to 10. It seems that seems to be the window in which like people find this cohort group supportive. When people are more experienced in that, and maybe it's just also time in their lives and what networks of support that they already have, that maybe they don't need a cohort to sort of make their work, that maybe they already have pre-existing networks that are feeling really supportive. So but it's sort of up to the artist to decide that. We're not going to like turn anyone away, like for you can apply if you feel like this is a good fit for you. And then you had another question, a follow-up. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, good
Okay.
answer. Um, you spoke of the different kind of offerings that this program has. Can you talk a little bit about specifically, like there's like a production stipend that's offered, what's that about, and like what
So
kind of programming does this support?
yes, so each artist will get, I think it's 1,500 for like their artist fee, and that's just like basically you're coming to cohort meetings and you're in the program and you use it for whatever you need to. There's no like I'm not like checking receipts for that amount of money. But then each artist, depending on where they're based, will also get a production stipend, which is kind of a funny word because there's no production necessarily yet at the end. But basically, it's to support the creation of your work. So that basically it does need receipts so that we don't you don't have all this taxable income, but it could usually most folks use it for studio time rental. Some people's costumes are a big part of the process of creating work, so maybe costumes are part of it. Sometimes you're looking to create new music and you want like to be able to pay your collaborators to be a part of it or to just brainstorm or maybe to record something. It is definitely it is definitely varied depending on the project and the artist. We just ask for like we just approve the the spending before you do it, so then we can reimburse you or pay the collaborator directly, so then you don't have to worry about those tax things. Um, and the amount for US, we don't know the final amount. We only know once we have the final cohort, but it can range from 2,000 to 2,500 for US based artists. That's just one example. And then for India based or maybe South Asia based artists, I think it's like 450, no, 40,000 rupees or in that range. And again, it'll depend on where everyone is from and the funding that we also get on our end, but that's kind of the range that we work with. Most of the funders that we work with really have us focus the funds on US based artists. So that's kind of why the production stipend for the US based artists is a little bit higher. But we fundraise and we work really hard to make sure that we have uh, this cohort be from all over the world. So we're even though it's sometimes easier to make it a whole cohort of US based artists, we know that this dialogue is really important. So we hope that people from everywhere apply.
You spoke of collaborators and the importance of like inviting them into the process and getting paid and all of these things. And there's a question on the forum about collaborators. Can you expand on why collaborators are important to list and how they work with our selection criteria?
Yeah, so I want to acknowledge that not all projects are in a stage where there is collaborators. So, but if there are collaborators, we want to know who they are and what relationships you have with them. We don't want you to list people you've never met or you've never talked to about a particular project. It doesn't help if you just list people that are known or people you might approach. It really is for us to get a good sense of like the networks you're in and what relationships you're leaning on to create your work, because of course a lot of dance making is not possible without these relationships. So it's okay if they've been someone that you've worked with in the past and maybe you haven't chatted specifically about this project, but just wanting to get a sense of like, are they music collaborators? Are they movement collaborators? Is this a group piece or a solo piece? Are they doing dramaturgical support? Anything goes, and you can sort of define what that means. And we encourage that because even solo work is not done as a solo. I think even solo work, it requires a team of folks to make it happen. So we want you to talk about it. And if you feel like this is not, you're in a part of the project where you're not ready for collaborators yet, or you're not ready to identify them, we would just like to know why. So like, the reason why is because I'm specifically thinking about this one thing, and this is what my research is focused on. And this is why I'm not bringing in collaborators right now, but maybe that's why you need a cohort to talk about your work with. So just that clarity would be helpful.
And then along those lines, I was wondering, it says that the collaborators should meet should ideally meet the eligibility criteria for the residency itself. Could you talk about why that's the case and if
Yeah,
it'll, yeah.
I think it's like, I guess I don't remember if it says it's a requirement, but I think it helps because I think if an artist is from a particular community or from a particular network of support, I think, especially in these times where maybe your work is not seen in conventionally funded spaces, then I think we want to know that that this work is also being supportive of that community in some way, and is not just a way to give folks who already have plenty of opportunity and who are already in a privileged position, it's not just another way for them to work on their projects. But yeah, I think that like most of the work I do in Nava, and I think a lot of the people we work with in Nava or even are associated with in other companies, like are all really committed to these networks and relationships, and really being rooted in a particular community that might be tied to, again, identity, which could mean caste, religion, queerness, or whatever that means to a person. It could be rooted in your genre of dance. It could be rooted in however you define that. But I think that those relationships and networks are really important to this program.
Speaking of identity, can you talk about like what relationship to South Asia you're expecting applicants to have and what feels appropriate for this residency?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give sort of this blanket statement and some specific examples, but I think I also want applicants to know that I might be missing something. So, feel free to reach out with, questions or like something I didn't think of. We're not perfect, and, we're still developing this program, but um, I think relationship to South Asia could mean you are like born and raised in a country in South Asia. And this could be, it's not obviously this is India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal. Like there's a list that we have on our website. And then there's also folks who are obviously not born in those countries, who are born in the diaspora and have some kind of relationship with it, either maybe their parents, grandparents, or have were born there and they're immigrants, and now you're raised in a different country. Maybe you're not South Asian by heritage at all, but you are of a different background, and yet you're doing a South Asian genre. And actually, it's really hard for you to do that, genre of dance because of racism that exists in the South Asian dance industry. So I think again, it's sort of like it could mean a lot of different things. And the like my interest, and I think the interest of Unrehearsed and the folks that we work with in this program, is like, what are those relationships to South Asia, and how do they come into our dance and movement practice, as a ecosystem, as an industry, and like what are the voices that are missing. So even though this is what I'm saying, I know there are folks that are like many generations removed from South Asia, and but still have like some connection either through their genre or whatever it is that I didn't think of, that would still be able to apply for this program. You know, hopefully that
Um,
answers it. And if you have
yeah.
questions about that, just please reach out. Like we're not scary. Like I don't think we can answer questions.
Um, and like going off of that too, there's that one question about community impact, and it says that this is like an opportunity to share what some of our identities are. Are you looking for us to sort of like list whatever identities we might have, just so you know what they are? And is that part of the criteria, or are you looking more for how these things impact our work? What's the right balance for that question?
I think it should feel honest. Like I don't want it to feel like, okay, I need to suddenly become queer to apply for the like, or I and it's also like I also understand that some of these identities are not talked about and they're not openly spoken about in our communities. So like to know that this is just between us and the panelists, and we're not looking to like tokenize, like, okay, pick one from each community. This is not what that is. It's more about like sometimes these identities make it really hard to create work in this arts ecosystem. And that's why we're missing a lot of different voices in this space. And so if that feels like it's a part of how you're making work and what your, again, mutual communities of support are, then we want to know about it, because that's an important part of this dialogue and discussion. So if that doesn't feel important to you, you can list it, but we'll know from your answer that like that's not what is driving your work, and that's okay. That's not it's not a bad thing. So don't feel like I need to create an answer that really like makes me sound a certain way. No, it's like we just want to understand you better, and build the best, most, the most right cohort. And again, that can change from year to year. So
Yeah, I think I remember like when we were talking about this too, one thing we talked about is like you don't need to make yourself sound academic and like put academic writing to all of your identities. You can just talk about how this is affecting your life
yeah,
in a way that feels honest and authentic and within your comfort level for disclosure on this application, and that's totally fine.
that's
Um,
yeah, exactly.
mhm. And for the project description itself, it's kind of going through like the conceptual weight of the project and the practical execution of it within, or the research of it within the framework of the program. What's the sort of balance that you want within that question? And do you need any information about how future plans for the project, or is it really about what's going on in Unrehearsed?
Yeah, I don't think we've needed as panelists future plans for the project, because we know that future plans can only be made once you do step one. And it's like some of the other grants that we apply for, you need to have this whole plan. You have scene one, scene two, like this is what I imagine. And the reality of a residency when you're in like a making space is like you are trying things, but those are basically hypotheses. Like you don't know if it'll work until you do it. So for me, I'm personally, and I'm not going to speak for all the panelists, but we are interested in the questions you want to ask with this residency, and what the project idea is, knowing that the process might lead to additional questions or, maybe slight shifts in your project. We do try to hold ourselves accountable to the project idea and like, so make sure it's something that you really love and want to think about. And it's not just like, oh, this project sounds nice for this residency. Like, if you don't want to do that project, don't apply. Like, don't do it. It's okay. Find a good fit for your project if this is not it. But it's about the inquiry and the questions you want to ask and how you might answer them. It doesn't need to be a fully fleshed out project right at the get-go. And like what you were saying, Ankita, it doesn't need to sound academic. It is nice to know how you see your project in the context of your life, your community, your work, but it doesn't need to sound like a scholarly research article.
Um, the last kind of selection bit of the application is going into the work samples. And I was wondering, since a lot of these ideas are like in process and they're research oriented, like, are we judging based on the strength of like the movement material we're seeing or on the concepts that we're seeing? How are we assessing the work samples?
Well, definitely production quality is not a priority for us in the work sample. So if you're like waiting to get a perfect video that's from a performance, like that's not like it's never been like our top priority. If you want to record with your phone or laptop just for concept, that's totally fine. If you have past work, that's also fine. You just need to let us know why that's similar or different than what you're proposing. We look for inquiry. I don't know. It's like I know it's sort of vague. There are many amazing movers who apply, and not all of them. Many of them get selected, but it's not because they're amazing movers only. It's because of what they want to ask in this residency and how this residency can support their process. So we appreciate beautiful movement, of course, and of course that is defined by the artist and their practice. But I think what's the priority is what they're trying to ask with their work and their process. And sometimes it is the most grainy video with the coolest idea that that really rises to the top. So it's more about how can you demonstrate like some of your inquiry through the video, and it's not just showing us like technique or good dancing, quote unquote.
Amazing. And like as you're selecting the cohort, are you looking for balancing the cohort in particular ways? I know you said that there's no quota on I have to have this person and this person, but what does that look like?
Yeah, we don't have a quota, but we try to create a like a cohort where there's enough common ground between the cohort members, but also enough like differences so that we're all understanding like different genres and points of view um, in our work. So it has really worked out so far. We're like the ones that rise to the top, quote unquote, like are often like very, very different from each other. And I think that's just a reflection of the fact that many artists are very, very like all artists creating work have very, very different questions. So I love seeing that just sort of naturally occur in the process. But we are conscious, like we're probably not going to have like six Bharatanatyam only or six dancers who are all contemporary dancers or like we are conscious of sort of like again that doesn't fully represent this dance dancescape dance ecosystem that we live in. So I mean we're conscious of that. So but there isn't like there's going to be one Bharatanatyam and one Kathak or nothing like that.
And then as you're kind of balancing these like big questions of like how people are engaging socially with their work, and doing, pushing themselves and taking risks with their ideas, uh, how might that context differ across US based artists versus artists who are in South Asia or elsewhere, from the South Asian diaspora or artistic diaspora?
I mean, what I can talk about what we've seen, and I never know what to expect because it can vary from year to year, and also it is very much tied to what's going on in the world. Um, and but what we've noticed is that like the social the questions that come up for US based artists are different than the ones that come up for India based artists, for instance. And it really is in response to what is going on around them, you know, and the discussions that are happening around them in the moment. And again, not all work challenging the status quo is like social justice forward necessarily. It really is. Maybe it's something that moves your particular field in a certain way, you know. It is dependent on where that artist is located and how they're responding to the moment, you know, where they are, and it can vary so significantly. And that's why we have panelists from all different parts of the world to help us sort of read those applications and read into a little bit what that means. Like, what does it mean to challenge the status quo in your field or in your genre?
Amazing. And then within the cohort itself, when you have makers from different parts of the world, what does the program really feel like, and how does that sort of exchange take place?
Yeah, so we have I'd mentioned the monthly meetings. So in that space, we do artist sharings, like everyone shares work and we all sort of respond and provide feedback to each other. We also do like workshops together where sometimes we invite guest choreographers or movers or like filmmakers or something, and they sort of provide a small workshop on, you know, related to what the cohort is working on. So then it's sort of like artistic development in some ways. We also like I also lead a number of choreographic tasks that I actually sort of mold according to what the cohort is working on. And then we also have, you know, the idea is that the cohort members can also offer tasks and workshops to each other, sort of like a peer learning resource as well. And that happens all in the Zoom meeting. We have like 2 hour Zoom meetings, like once a month, and then a WhatsApp group where we are constantly messaging and everything with each other. At the midpoint, we do a sort of a larger work in progress session where people share up to 15 minutes of work, and we invite like both peer mentors and mentor mentors, like more experienced folks, to come and provide feedback to that person. Sometimes it all happens within the like meeting space, either on Zoom or in person. And sometimes those folks will reach out to them after the fact and provide more detailed feedback. And for the US based artists, we have funding to have us all meet in person. So we try to meet in the Bay Area, and often there is at least a couple of California based artists as well. And we all meet and we share our work in progresses in person. We do like a 2 day retreat with workshops and meals and just getting to know each other. For the like South Asia based artists, we don't do anything in person yet, unless someone wants to help us find money for this. We did one a couple years ago, but since then it's been harder to sort of make that happen in terms of resources. But we still connect on Zoom, and the public sharing, which is sort of the witnessing of all the artists' work across their communities and our communities, that all happens online, which I think feels very nice to be in space together. Um, okay, did I get everything? I did. Yeah, yeah.
Can we receive feedback on our application before sending, or?
Um, like it's hard to give feedback on every single application, but if you have questions about what you're applying with and seeing if it's a good fit, like please reach out, you know, and if you're not sure, like you have a couple projects in mind and you're not sure which one sort of applies, like reach out and we're going to talk to you. And sometimes it's just nice to chat and sort of understand if you have any other questions associated with the applications. One thing I think I should have probably mentioned this earlier. AI is becoming more and more popular. I read on a number of different panels, and it's actually this year, it's even just within a couple of rounds of applications, it's changed significantly, like how the use of AI, like how I'm reading applications. It does not always serve the artist to use AI. So I personally would rather read typos and like run on sentences, um, if that is really what you feel about your project and is really the questions that you have. I don't want AI to dilute your like urgency and, you know, why you feel this project is important. So like I don't mind if you're not a native English speaker, and it's totally fine. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct and perfect. I just want to hear what your questions are. And if you have questions about that, like how to make that clear, like we can help, we can talk to you about that. Um, and in the questions, we have like literal bullet points of like answer, like talk about these things. If you want to just put those in your answer box and just answer those, that is fine. It can be bullet points. It does not have to be an essay or an argument. So yeah, that's all.
Also worth noting, I think that there is a video option. So if you're someone who maybe does feel less comfortable writing and communicating in English and you feel like video might be better, or for other reasons video might be better, feel free to submit a 3-minute or under video that details some of your answers to these questions.
But if that feels stressful, don't do that. Like if you're
Good
spending a
luck
lot
for
of time,
me.
don't do it.
I think that's my questions. Do you have any questions you want to answer for yourself?
Myself. Um, no, I like don't please don't be afraid to reach out. Uh, the more we know you, the better. But also it's so that if you have questions that you might not even realize you have, like let us answer them. And we don't want you to feel like you are missing something when you are submitting the application. Um, yeah, I think that's all. Like, don't be afraid to reach out. And even if, oh, one thing I do want to say is if you've applied before and like you should apply again. Like don't think that you've applied before and maybe I didn't get it and like they don't want me. No, that's it's like sometimes you have no idea where the cohort is sitting and how it is being built, and maybe in this round you would be like the sort of ideal fit. So please like apply again, and if you want feedback on a past application, I don't know that I can always get it, but I will try my best to get it for you. So please please don't be afraid to apply again if you have a project in mind that might be a good fit. Cool.
That's it.
Do it. We did it. The deadline is November 30th. And the Google form link should be in the caption of this video somewhere. Um, and the email for questions. And I think that's it. We look forward to seeing your application.
Yeah.